Hey, how's it going, guys? Ancient Rune here, back with another video, and today I'll be going over Quag and I's Redistributor Moze build called Chain Moze. As you can guess, I ripped this name off of Chain Zane, but I couldn't think of anything clever. Anyways, the Redistributor is far stronger on Moze than Zane, but it just needs some extra oomph to it. We use amp mechanics with Bloodletter and non-low level shields to optimize the damage of the Redistributor to clear content pretty easily. We also do a lot of funky tech to push this as much as possible, making it a really fun build to use and especially fun to theorycraft. Again, shout out to Quag for this. He started the build and piqued my interest, then we min-maxed it together to make this monster. Don't forget to like the video and subscribe to the channel. The save file will be found in my Discord, which is linked down below, and I hope you guys enjoy. Alright, and for the gear here, of course, we have the Redistributor. Now, if you don't know, every 7th shot with the Redistributor is amped, and those amped shots chain. And they do this weird thing where they chain multiple times on that 7th shot. And when you use some sort of amp mechanic, it will make those shots always chain. They will not always get that damage boost on the 7th shot, as well as the multiple chains. So that 7th shot is still very powerful, but having that constant chain is still really good. Now, this is not a splash gun, which on Moze for the most time, you do not use a non-splash gun unless it has some sort of gimmick. And this kind of has a gimmick, but we also just throw a lot of formula into this to make it work, where on normal builds, you would not need as much gear on this. This is just more of like a fun build and showing off the Redistributor on Moze. Not that this is at all impossible. There's plenty of flexibility here to where you could still farm for this, but it's a lot easier just with splash guns. But with that, we have less power from firing the Skag Den. So we focus a little bit more on big surplus while doing some other really good stuff. But we have Cryo here for superior cryo power boost, making it better than Corrosive, and Corrosive is like the general, or shield armor is the general health bar, so it's just really good focusing on that. And then we have you right here, which yes is nice with shields, but mainly for the rat explosions, even though this already is going to be mostly a mobbing build and still does single target fine, but mostly a mobbing build. It just makes mobbing even better, which is really nice. And then we have a cheats tip here. This is something that's optional, but if you just shoot an enemy for like a second or two, it'll drop some chips, which will then boost your weapon damage. And so then you can just do that and then swap back to Redistributor, and then you just have more increased damage. This is especially good if you do have weaker gear, and you can do some similar stuff with the Gold Rush, but with the Gold Rush, you have to get that cash from enemies that you kill. So you do want to keep that in mind with the Gold Rush. So I don't use this here, but I do plenty fine without it. And sometimes I throw on the cheap tips, but I also am throwing on like perfect gear here. And then the Smog is nice for fight for your life damage. Since you can't shoot and sprint and fight for your life, ADSing is fine, which the Smog can do. You can still get back up with the Redistributor, but the Smog is just better single target with the increased damage while aiming down sights. And then I just have a Vanquisher here for some nice movement speed while having the Cryo for that boost with Harmonious Havoc. And then I have the Health Regen Anointment just because I'm using Terror Anointments already. It's just something fun to have on there, and just some passive health regen while going in between sections is pretty nice. And then you could still go Corrosive here if you end up going like route that isn't going superior firepower, which is possible, but I would not suggest it. So it still is really nice to do that. But for the shield, you're going to be using amp shields because of Bloodletter recharging shields based off of health, and then the Russian offensive being constant healing. We are going to constantly have our amp shield up. So I like to use the Infernal Wish. This is going to be usually the optimal play, having that extra projectile and extra shot. Now, extra projectile doesn't really do much for short fuse, as well as having lesser amp, but it still is really good, and it still clears stuff faster because short fuse is going to shine the most in bossing. Doesn't mean it sucks in mobbing, but we still do enough damage to where the short fuse isn't the only thing doing damage here. You can also go a Mana Well. This is just good amp. You slam, you also get a bunch of damage reduction, and a shock bonus element is really nice. We also have the rerouter, but I didn't find it too helpful here. I also did mess with like low level 1 shields, as people did back in the day years ago with Redistributor on Moze, and just still do with amp shields in general. I don't know the actual legit lowest level these are possible. I just made them level 1 to try them out with those health regen passives on the artifact and class mod, and it did work, but it's like a lot harder to do because you have to get these low level items and those really specific passives while still having good damage passives. So with that, on the anointment, we have action skill and applied terror. So we are taking advantage of big surplus, but we are also cycling Cub so we can get Terror V1 damage. Now we could go Terror Cryo in here, but we want that URAD anointment so we can get better red solutions, even though we have this terror, and terror is not active 24/7. It is active for most of the time, but at some times it's just not always active. Just having that extra V1 damage to go into your guns and short fuse is really nice, as well as that fire rate, and with the cookie combo also ends up being more V1 damage, and that fire rate just means getting to that 7th shot, which is that extra damage, is even better. So with that, we use the Hex. Hex is just general, really good Moze grenade, really good for keeping up Russian offensive, even if we're not shooting, so we can just sprint and then start shooting again and already have our shield full. Just another thing healing us, which is really important. The only other anointment you could use is on grenade throw, which works really well if you don't want to do this terror stuff. And then you can go after exiting Iron Bear, gain increased health and shields, or Iron Bear kills cooldown, but if you're not going this terror route, you don't need to cycle Cub. Then for the class mod, you want a Bloodletter. This is a must-have. You're going to want 3 points into Thin Red Line, and then SMG damage at minimum. Other passives you have are weapon damage, Hyperion Fire Rate. You could also get Slash Radius for those red explosions. You could technically also go Splash Damage to help short fuse, but I would not focus on that. Having at least 1 point in Phalanx Doctrine is really nice, just for that those stacks with the shield and the gun damage. And then just having 1 point in Desperate Measures is nice, since we're already going to lower health. Now, if you're not able to get a good Bloodletter with 3 in Thin Red Line, you can make some skill tree adjustments, probably from Green Tree, to be able to unlock Thin Red Line. Either put in 3 points or just enough to where you're at 3 out of 3. So if you have like 1 or 2 in Thin Red Line, then you can have 2 extra points to still throw in Green Tree still. And then for the artifact, you're going to want to use the Company Man. Now, mag size is really nice, so it's area's effect damage. Having area effect damage just for short fuse, red explosions, and the radius for red explosions is really nice. For stuff you'd want is going to be Hyperion damage, mag size, fire rate. You could go crit damage, but crit damage isn't always the best on Moze, especially since it doesn't help the most on short fuse. A crit that proc short fuse, you'll still get that base crit damage, but I'd rather focus on fire rate, mag size, and damage. Action skill cooldown rate is also really nice since we're cycling Cub, but I wouldn't say it's the most important. I would just focus on getting good passives, and we do have a good amount of gun damage, so getting mag size and fire rate for Hyperion is probably most likely what you want to focus on, as well as you can just use cheap tips for extra weapon damage if needed. And then for the skill tree, we are going to start with Blue Tree. We still get Fire in the Skag Den since it applies to short fuse and red explosions. We only go 1 point in Means of Destruction because we're not constantly dealing splash damage that can proc Means of Destruction, because Hex does not proc it. We aren't getting much from the ammo regen, and besides, with a gun like this, Means of Destruction isn't going to do a lot for it, so we mainly just have it for the grenade chance, and we want stuff elsewhere. First, we have 5 out of 5 Grizzled, because we want to try and get our Cub back as much as possible to cycle that terror. Then we have Stainless Steel Bear, which will boost Fire in the Skag Den as well as Big Surplus. Tour Cross Promotion for the splash damage and splash radius from those red explosions. Then we just have auto bear, just because this can honestly be thrown elsewhere. I don't know why I still have it on here. You could throw it on means of destruction or a vampire. And then we have pull the holy pin. This is just so our grenade impacts can crit. The beams of the hex do not get affected by this, but the hex can just naturally crit anyways. Then just 1 point in vampire just because. And then we have a point into the last, as it's just good for 5 your life for throwing grenades. And then we have short fuse, as it's just a double dipping skill. And if you're looking at a build like this, I'm sure you know how dumb short fuse is. We go nothing in red tree, but again, if you end up not having enough points to get third red line, you can either not go red and go maybe consecutive hits or kill stack, or take points from green tree and still get third red line to be able to use red. Basically, just go 5 armored infantry and as many points in third red line as you need. Then in green tree, we get 5 cloud of lead. We get 1 point in Daka Bear just so it's easier for Cub to kill itself. We have 1 in redistribution as we get ammo regen and health regen, but mainly for the ammo regen. Then we have 5 in scrappy, as it's just good quality life stuff. We only have 1 in Stoke the Embers. It's mainly Get Down the Tree, and Iron Bank and Match Set are just not worth it compared to it. It'll help big surplus, but since it's not our big damage source, I'd rather focus on other things. We have Scorching RPMs to get fire rate, as well as some crit damage, and also action skill damage to boost big surplus and Skagden. Then we have Russian Offensive. This is a must-have. This is at most what you have to reach. Getting Scorching RPMs is still really nice, but Russian Offensive is the must-have skill in Green Tree. Then we go Pointing Specialist Bear, just so Iron Cub does more damage to be able to kill itself faster. And then just because we're in this area, we took some for the road. We are blowing up Cub. It's not going to always be active, but when it is active, it's really nice because you're not reloading. And yes, this build does reload. No, we're not going to take Forge because Forge sucks. Even though we are so close here, you'd have to give up either Short Fuse or Superior Firepower, which is absolutely not worth it. And then we have in Purple Tree, we have Biofuel to regenerate our health. Then we have Big Surplus, which will give us a times 31 Mayhem scaling bonus element when Iron Bear is on cooldown or Iron Cub is on cooldown. Then we have Double Time for movement speed. This helps Cub get to where it needs to blow itself up faster, and just some nice extra movement speed while Cub is up. Then we have Harmonious Havoc, which is used for gun damage per matching element. We have 5 of cryo here, so we have 50% extra gun damage. Then we have Fired Up for amazing fire rate. We got some extra points to get down the tree with Nitro Engines to get extra cooldown rate. Then we go Superior Firepower for the cryo damage and the status effect damage for red solutions. And then we have Limit Break for cooldown. Now normally you would go like Flame or Kill Stack Anointment if you're trying to, or not kill stack, kills cooldown anointment, as that would be better at cycling Cub, but we need Bloodletter, and also the whole reason we're doing this is for that terror. So we just try and get as much cooldown as possible while still getting stuff we need like Biofuel, which you could either throw Nitro Engines or really big guns, but I'd rather have the health regen for us, and also helps with Bloodletter, I believe. And then for the action skill, we're going Cub, so we just have regular Iron Cub, and then I just have Efficiency Engine, just getting a little bit of gun damage while Cub is up. None of these are actually really good here, so I just go Efficiency Engine. And then I use the Grenade Launcher with the lock speed and loaded to blow Cub up. You do have the option of Molten Roar as well, but for this build specifically, I found Grenade Launcher to be better for blowing up Cub. I hope you guys enjoyed the build video. This build is super fun to use, and if you love the Redistributor like me, you will definitely love this as well. It is easier to just throw on a Redistributor on Zane and use Barrier, but that doesn't make it a super OP gun. This isn't exactly super OP either, but it is much stronger than Zane. Again, you can find the save file in my Discord, which is linked down below, as well as my other socials. If you haven't, I would really appreciate it if you would like and subscribe, and I will see you guys next time. Peace.